addition to the deviation language. We'll go into detail on it, but it's really just reflecting what's on the MCP. But give you a chance to look at it, and I'll go into it in my presentation. Thanks for the copy.
Setting up a backup recorder?
I mean, that's what I was asking about.
Yep. That's just to reflect the two different locations.
Yeah, I think that was the intent.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that as well, which is fine.
Adam, I'm John, by the way.
John, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, you know, we have disagreements, fine, but you can be like the most agreeable person and not return phone calls.
Right.
And you can be the most disagreeable person, but at least return my call. And I'll still love you.
Yeah, and that's how Steve was. Like, you know, it was, you know, we won some, we lost some.
Yeah.
He kind of controlled the
Again.
initiative, like baby. So like some of the architectural stuff. He'd be like, nah, that's not gonna work. Oh.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is February 1st, 2023, and this is case DCI 2021-00053. It is a request to rezone to the CPD zoning district along Bayshore Road. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath, so if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide is the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. With respect to how we'll proceed today, first we're going to hear from the applicant. They're going to present their request and call any witnesses that they may have to support that request. Following that, we will hear from the county staff. They will present their recommendation in this case, which is a recommendation of approval with conditions and deviations. After we hear from the county staff, that will be the opportunity for the public to come forward and speak. If you would like to speak today, there is only one opportunity to speak, so I would encourage you to take notes as we go through things so that you can make the most of your time at the podium. There is no time limitation today, however, so take as much time as you need to make the comments that you have. Following the public comment period, again, it will be closed after that. We'll come back to the applicant and the staff. They will present any closing arguments that they may have or any rebuttal to address some of the comments or questions that may come up during public comment. With that, we can begin with the applicant.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Dan DeLisi. I am with DeLisi Inc. I'm a land use planner and the consultant for Racetrac, the applicant. With me here today is John Voidak, the civil engineer, Yuri, the transportation consultant. We have Racetrac in the back, and the three other people are property owners. So they're kind of with us. So I'm just going to run through a presentation, hand it over to Yuri for a couple minutes just to let you know that level of service is not going to be degraded. And if I go astray on anything, John Voidak will chime in and reel me back in. So the property is located right at the southwest quadrant of I-75 and Bayshore Road, State Road 78, right here. You can see this is the big Love's truck stop, and this is the subject property. To the north here is a commercial plan development that I believe was zoned sometime around the 2010 timeframe. We did that zoning as well, and it's for all commercial development at the interchange. The property itself is 5.29 acres. The proposal is for a convenience store with fuel pumps, similar to the use just to the east. 6,000 square foot convenience store with a total of 22 fuel pumps. The master concept plan is fairly straightforward. The main access is here through a median cut, planned median cut of State Road 78. That would align with the access to the north. You can see there's already some sort of median cut in existence right now without any improvements. So that's how the main access would work. It would come into the site. The main fuel canopy is to the north of the site. On the south side is a truck fueling station. In the middle is the convenience store. And then we have indigenous preserve, or indigenous restoration rather, which I'll talk about in a moment, and additional indigenous restoration planting area over there. And then we have additional dry detention on the site as well. We do have secondary access, over here to Park 78 Drive, which aligns with Love's. The criteria for approval is listed in LDC section 34145D4. That's the criteria for approval for a plan development. I'll just run through these fairly quickly. I know staff also has a presentation which they'll supplement this. We are in the, consistent with the LEAD plan, this is the general interchange land use category. I do want to note that the general interchange land use category is the only land use category that specifically calls out this use, service stations, as an appropriate use for that land use category. So it's very clear that we're consistent with that future land use category. Goal 6 defines how commercial uses will be located. Policy 6.1.1 has a whole list of evaluation criteria, which includes landscape buffering, urban services. I'll get into that in a little bit, but we have available urban services, and we are not asking for any deviations from the buffering guidelines, just the one deviation on the indigenous area, which will be enhanced through landscaping. And then policy 6.1.4 addresses compatibility, which is also a criteria of approval, criteria C. So you can see an aerial close-up of the subject property. On all sides, we have vacant property except to the east, which again is a like use, so clearly those two uses are compatible. To the north, as I mentioned, is also a commercial plan development, also a compatible use, and that's across from an arterial road. And then to the west and to the south, this is vacant AG2 property. So right now it's vacant. Criteria D is whether or not we have sufficient access. Again, we do access an arterial road right here, and then we access Park 78 Drive, which comes right out to the interchange over on our east.
Just to clarify, there's the connection points that are shown to the south and the southeast, but those are to ag lands. So is that just being shown, those arrows?
Future.
It's not a code requirement,
Cross-access.
correct? That would only be required if they were commercial property. So they're just being shown in the event that they're commercially developed?
Right, because that's really a primary access location there on the western boundary. So it's, we're kind of assuming that the other properties adjacent to us would utilize that road that we're building for future access.
So that's this road, and then this is access to the properties in the south because they need some sort of access. So if you go back to...
So they'll be improved on your site with some kind of stub out or something? Is that kind of the
Correct, yep.
intention? Okay, that's all I wanted to clarify. You kept saying 2 access points. I just wanted to get clarification on those since they were shown here as connections, but they're
Yeah.
ag zoned. Okay.
Yeah, and so, yeah, exactly. Those would be access points for the properties to the south so that they're not landlocked. Exactly.
Thank you.
So that's sufficient access. Criteria F, not adversely affect environmental resources. There are no environmental resources on the site. I am going to talk about this very small indigenous area that's at this location. But the site has been previously cleared. This portion was going to be developed as a gas station at one point. That's been cleared as well. Availability of urban services. We are in an urban area. We're at an interchange. There is development immediately adjacent to us, and we do have a letter of service availability from Lee County Utilities.
And FGUA.
Thank you. And Florida Gulf, yeah, Utility Association, I think. All right. So going back to criteria B, we are asking for one deviation, and that is from the deviation from the indigenous requirement. So the code requires 20% open space, half of which needs to be indigenous preserve. There is one small, it's 0.33 acre indigenous area right here. As you can see on the master concept plan, this conflicts with the access point, which needs to have this alignment because of the median cut. There's not really any discretion about that because moving the access, you can't move it closer to the interchange. It's all regulated by FDOT. So, it's where we're at. There are special criteria in the North Fort Myers Community Plan. So not only do we need to justify the deviation based on the PD requirements, which are an enhancement of the master concept plan and not otherwise negatively impact health, safety, and welfare, but also there needs to be some sort of, you need to apply the variance criteria. And in this case, there is a uniqueness about this site that causes us to need to do this. It's not just because we don't want to preserve any indigenous vegetation. It is in the location of the only place where we could have our main access. So that's the justification for the deviation. As a condition of doing that, we are looking at replantings at this location here, which is helps with screening of the dumpster, and also to the south. If I go back to the master concept plan, it's easier. Right here along the south, which also is something that would enhance the buffer to adjacent future uses. So we're able to kind of turn this into a win-win, if you will. And then with that, let me turn it over to Yuri, who can talk to you about transportation.
Thank you.
Oh, and let me submit the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. And that'll be applicant's exhibit 1. Thank you.
And you have that.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Yuri Baika with TR Transportation Consultants. I've been sworn in and previously accepted as an expert in transportation planning, and I've testified in this forum before numerous times.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. We prepared a traffic study for this application. As previously mentioned, the rezoning request is to permit a 6,000 square foot gas station with a maximum of 22 refueling positions. As part of the traffic study, we first prepared a trip generation analysis to estimate the number of trips a development would generate. We then took those trips and added them to the surrounding roadway network in order to see if there's available capacity on SR 78 or Bayshore Road to support this development. And our link level service analysis results indicate that there is sufficient capacity on SR 78. It was shown to operate level service C in the future with the project traffic added to the roadway. So that's the result of the link level service analysis. We've also met with Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, to discuss the access, our direct access to SR 78, and they've indicated that a full median opening will be allowed at that intersection and that a future signal may be required there to support the south side and the development on the north side as well. But again, the details about that, as well as site-related improvements like turn lanes, et cetera, those will be evaluated at the time of development order stage, which is when we exactly know what the final square footage of the building is going to be, what's the final number of refueling positions going to be, et cetera. So that concludes my brief part of presentation. If you have any questions.
There was mention of the intersection, and I wasn't clear. Is it they were analyzing an intersection, a signalized intersection that doesn't exist yet? It kept talking about State Road 78 and the racetrack, and I didn't know if that was this opening and that was how it was being referred to, or if there was a separate one. There was also one at Park, I believe. I
Yeah, so as part of our traffic study, we also looked at that full median opening in SR 78, but we analyzed it as an unsignalized condition because, again, there's no plans to signalize it yet. But FDOT, mentioned that it's likely to be signalized because it's not have to support this development as well as future development on the north side. So as part of our traffic study, to be conservative, we didn't look at it as a signal yet, but in the future, it will be likely to be a signal.
At the location,
At the westernmost,
western location?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Did staff have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that concludes our testimony.
Okay. The only other question I had was there was a stormwater analysis that was provided, I think it was attachment F. And it talked about, essentially in broad strokes, what the general stormwater management would be, but it still referenced the original MCP that showed the drive-through, and it had some water flow, it appeared, going through. I don't know if that was an access way or what opening that was. I just wanted to be sure we had testimony that the revised master concept plan isn't going to negatively impact. Thank you. Good afternoon.
No, good afternoon. For the record, John Voidock with DeLisi Fitzgerald.
Might also want to point out where the drive-through was and is no longer.
Sure.
That.
So there originally was a drive-through proposed in kind of in this general area, such that you enter and have the driver window, or you'd come in here and then loop driver window adjacent to the store and exit. There was some discussions with transportation staff at the county as to whether or not that would increase the trip generation. And rather than kind of argue about that, Racetrac has actually moved away from that concept, so we've just deleted the drive-through. So that actually opened this area up for some additional open water management instead of possibly underground storage, but it doesn't change the stormwater analysis. The system would essentially operate the same, and would the general flow of the property is from the north to the south, and so we would still discharge to the south at the same location.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever staff is ready, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Adam Mendez, Senior Planner with the Zoning Section. I do have 3 exhibits I'd like to present to you, one being staff's PowerPoint presentation. I have provided the applicant with a copy. I've also provided them a copy with these 2 other exhibits I'm going to present you. A revised zoning case map, which has since been updated to reflect the Bayshore 22 CPD to the east of the Love's travel stop, and a minor revision to a recommended condition related to deviation 1, that open space indigenous condition. Both of those, again, have been presented to the applicant, and I will approach if that is okay.
Thank you. So staff exhibit 1 is the staff report, and then staff exhibit 2, thank you, will be the PowerPoint, and 3 will be the zoning map. Thank you, and 4 will be the condition. Thank you so much, Adam.
The general basis for staff's recommendation is the proposed uses customary in interchange areas, appropriate contextually, and satisfies the rezoning criteria. As indicated by the applicant, the subject property delineated in red here is currently divided into 3 zoning districts: community commercial, CC, agricultural, AG2, as shown in the green shaded areas, and commercial plan development, CPD. The 5.29 acre property and the surrounding area at large are located in the general interchange future land use category as exhibited here. The Lee plan interchange areas are special areas adjacent to Interstate 75 that maximize critical access points. The general interchange areas in particular are intended primarily for land uses serving the traveling public, which encourage uses such as service stations, hotel, motel, restaurants, and gift shops. You can find reference to that in Lee Plan Policy 1.3.2 as the applicant indicated. So as proposed, the use of the convenience food and beverage store with fuel pumps is consistent with this policy, especially in a capacity that meets the vehicular demands of the interstate interchange area without causing transportation deficiencies and otherwise detriment to the public. The applicant touched on the surrounding land uses. I'll go over them again. To the north across Bayshore is the North River Plaza Commercial Plan Development, which is about 41.6 acres here that's vacant. It was approved in 2010 for 260,000 square feet of commercial uses and 180 unit hotel. To the east is the Bayshore I-75 Land Trust Commercial Plan Development, currently approved for 130,000 square feet of commercial uses and 182 unit hotel on 25.69 acres. That's this entire property here. A portion or a significant portion of it is developed with the Love's Travel Stop. 1.43 acres of which is part of this request. So we're going to talk about the removal of that from this PD. It was formerly developed with a Racetrac convenience store and gas station, which I believe was removed in the 2000s. To the south, across Bayshore Creek, and to the west is vacant agricultural lands, and they are also in that interchange future land use category, general interchange. Staff's recommendation of approval with conditions is supported by evidence in the staff report that the property is adequately served by public services, including roadways, utilities, potable water and sewer systems. The project is consistent with the Lee Plan as analyzed against Policy 1.3.2, general interchange areas, Objectives 2.1 and 2.2, development timing, and Standards 4.1.1 and 4.1.2, water and sewer, Goal 6, commercial land uses, and Goal 30, the North Fort Myers Community Plan, which establishes the commercial corridor provisions. This project is consistent with those provisions, including the onus to meet variance criteria for certain deviations, even when through the mechanism of a plan development approval. The project complies with the applicable provisions of the Land Development Code, which contains supplemental use and design regulations for the community plan area and desired land use of a convenience food and beverage store. The project is compatible with existing and planned uses in the surrounding area and will not pose a detriment to environmentally critical areas or natural resources. As outlined by the applicant, the access and transportation impacts will be sufficiently addressed at time of local development order, and the proposed use is appropriate at the proposed location. The recommended conditions here, and I have to omit these are carryover from a previous slide, so please ignore those. Condition 3 is relative to the open space for the project, and that aligns with staff's recommendation pertaining to the indigenous open space deviation. Condition 4 requires the applicable portion of the Bayshore I-75 Land Trust Commercial Plan Development be amended prior to local development order approval to reflect the 1.43 acre departure from the project acreages and intensity.
Be administratively done?
It can, yes. This can be pursued administratively, as other similar requests have been granted administratively. The threshold is just simply to not intensify, and for subtracting, there's certainly an avenue that can be done administratively. With respect to the applicant's 48-hour letter, staff and the applicant are in general agreement. 2 items that had their fair share of attention in the staff report was relative to the drive-through, which has since been removed. You can see here where it was originally, and the open space deviation because of the requirement to not only address the deviation criteria, but the variance criteria in the Land Development Code. The only deviation was a deviation from 10-415B, as previously discussed. That is the open space requirement. It pertains to large developments, which is defined by as 10 acres or more, or 2 acres or more of impervious. So this meets the 2 acres or more impervious threshold to be considered a large project. So they must provide 50% of their open space requirement through on-site preservation of existing native vegetative communities. As indicated in the applicant's environmental report, the only applicable area would be the 0.31 acres demonstrated here on the FLU CFCS code 420E1, which is right here, kind of where we were showing on that overlay you had was helpful, showing the road going through it. This would impair the cross-access connectivity and the access location, and staff finds that the property does have inherent property-specific conditions given the location and size. The ideal location for access and cross-access does follow this western boundary of the project. And staff believes the variance is the minimum variance requested as conditioned with supplemental native indigenous plantings depicted here on the master concept plan. I have provided a minor revision to the condition language associated to this deviation to ensure it captures both the native indigenous planting areas, both native indigenous planting areas on the master concept plan. The original language really only referenced the southeast, and there you can see just west of the convenience store we have a significant portion too of those committed plantings. With that summary of staff's recommendation of CPD approval with conditions, my presentation is complete, and I'd like to make myself available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I didn't have any questions. Did applicant have any questions of staff?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, we will open up the public comment period, and I will call the cards in the order that I have them. The first one is Charles Mayhew. Did you wish to speak? Okay. And Janie Broadbent? Okay, thank you. Okay, that was quick. I did have one other housekeeping question, and that was regarding the LCEC and access easements that are shown on the master concept plan to be vacated. I just wanted to know where that is in the process. Have they been applied for, and do we have a timing indication if that would be done before DO?
For the record, again, John Voidock with the Lacey Fitzgerald. We have not, basically we would coordinate that in conjunction with the new service for the project, kind of coinciding with the development order process.
Okay.
So that has not been initiated yet.
Okay, so the DO has not been applied for at this point?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had. Did staff have any final questions or
No,
comments?
thank you
to
so
put on
much.
the record? Okay, did applicant have any concluding remarks, or there's no rebuttal to put, so,
No, thanks. I think we're set.
okay, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. I appreciate your time. Please stay well and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Too.
Good to see you again.